So recently, Carl Ivacard and several other crypto right-wing shills have been throwing around a lot of buzzwords, and it's been a little more than usual. Now, this comes as no surprise, really, when your entire philosophy and coincidentally all of your ad revenue is based on stoking the primal fears of your teenage audience. It manifests as a very good tactic to avoid substantive debate. These buzzwords include vague terms such as cultural Marxist, neo-Marxist, regressive, and so on. But something that the liberal left has been adopting that piqued my interest was the assertion that leftists are attempting to quote-unquote subvert Western culture. This was the main reason behind Carl making a video literally entitled Why I Don't Criticize the Right. Now, we all know the real reason he doesn't criticize the right, and that is because he is unironically right-wing. In the video, he states that leftists are literally trying to destroy Western civilization. He provides no evidence for this, and he's been on Twitter repeating this narrative for seemingly no reason other than to ideologically masturbate and slander leftists because he doesn't like it. But what the fuck is the West? Is it an economic system? Communists' main goal is to destroy capitalism, and if that in itself is anti-Western, then the assertion is that capitalism is Western, surely. Would that then make China and India Western? Is the West a set of values? Several of Sargon's sycophantic trolls that have been repeating this narrative have claimed that Western civilization is based on a set of moral principles such as equality and freedom and a few other vague, spooky concepts. If the West is based on equality, then we should have to take it that up until very recently, the West didn't exist. Now, I as a leftist would argue that true equality has yet to be achieved, but let's just enter the world of liberal democracy for a second and pretend that equality is truly flourishing. Because it was only up until recently that in certain parts of Europe it was still illegal to be gay and you would be sent to prison. Now, if you consider that equality, then I don't know what to say to you. But if you don't consider that equality, then that shows that equality and Western values do not necessarily coincide with one another under all circumstances. Now, another argument that is thrown around is that Western values come from the Enlightenment age, where Europeans began thinking rationally rather than emotionally. We transcended our innate biases and began real philosophical debate. First of all, the idea of a public forum for debate had already existed for thousands of years, and it certainly didn't start with fucking Greece. Many Enlightenment thinkers were still riddled with racialist points of view, where they attempted to justify black slavery by using pseudo-scientific claims, such as the idea that blacks are more naturally submissive than Europeans. Immanuel Kant, in fact, claimed that races came through climate exposure upon birth, and he had this to say of the different races among human beings. Humanity is at its greatest perfection in the race of the whites. The yellow Indians do have a meager talent, the Negroes are far below them, and at the lowest point are the part of the American peoples. Now, I'm not suggesting that because many Enlightenment thinkers were racist, that we should therefore disregard it as being unimportant to the development of our philosophical understanding. I'm saying that pointing to it as an example of our values is meaningless, because the Enlightenment encapsulated a plethora of radically opposing views that were mutually incompatible with each other. Are Western values merely cultural? Are there just innate differences between the cultures of, say, Europe and the Middle East? If that were true, that would debunk the idea that leftists are attempting to overthrow the West, because nearly every major leftist philosopher and thinker of the 19th century was Western. Unless you can prove that Marxists and anarchists are somehow pariahs within their societies by mere accident of circumstance, then that argument falls apart entirely. In fact, some of the modern criticisms that leftists direct at philosophers of the past is that they were too Eurocentric, but I digress. When reality comes knocking at your door, it reveals that the idea of the West is just another unfalsifiable, amorphous concept that exists in the minds of humans and humans alone. Almost all leftists are in agreement that these ideas are completely immaterial and therefore meaningless. So how can we seek to physically destroy something that we don't even believe exists in the first place? Just like nationalism and religion, it is just another example of meaningless tribalism that continues to divide humanity for no good reason.